How do you think your dad would react if he were to walk in the room today and we were to describe the company he founded? What do you think his reaction would be?
He'd be astounded. He would be astounded. I'm Paul Snyder, J. Paul Snyder. I'm the 10th child of Ora and Marion Snyder. I went to work for the funeral homes in 1970.
I'm J. Todd Snyder. I am Ora Snyder's grandson. I'm third generation funeral director, and I have been working with Snyder Funeral Homes almost 40 years, I guess really 38 years maybe.
My name is Dennis Snyder. Ora Snyder was my grandfather. My father was Richard Snyder. So I celebrated 50 years as a licensed funeral director, and Snyder Funeral Homes are celebrating their 100th year.
I'm Clay Snyder. I'm a grandson to Ora and Marion Snyder. My parents were Phil and Madeline Snyder. I've served 38 years in the family concern and currently serve as its president. And my son Ridge joined the family firm in 2019.
Hi, my name is Weston Snyder, or Wes Snyder. I've been in the Snyder Funeral Homes for 26 years. I am a great-grandson to Ora Snyder. Richard Snyder, his son, was my grandfather. Dennis Snyder is my father. I've been in the family business at Snyder Funeral Homes now for 26 years, and I was the first of the fourth generation to enter the business of Snyder Funeral Homes.
My name is Chad Snyder. I am a great-grandson to Ora Snyder, and I am the second member of the fourth generation. I got out of mortuary school in 2002, so I've officially been working in Snyder Funeral Homes for 19 years.
My name is Sean Snyder. I am the great-grandson of Ora Snyder, and I've worked here at the funeral home for 14 years.
My name is Hannah Snyder-Wernicke, and Ora was my great-grandfather, and I've been a licensed funeral director for 10 years.
Well, my name is Ridge Snyder. Ora Snyder would be my great-grandfather. I've been working in the family funeral business since I was in the 4th grade. I just finished my funeral apprenticeship in 2020, and I am aspiring to be a funeral director and working in the family business.
Yeah, I'm Gideon Snyder, and I'm a great-grandson of Ora, and really I've worked in this business as long as I can remember.
Dad, tell me how it all started.
My father opened up the first funeral home in 1922. The building is still in Johnsville, where my father started, quite in disrepair now. I wasn't very old then, and I was 7 years old when we moved from Johnsville to Lexington.
And what prompted him to come to Lexington?
One night at Masonic Lodge in Belleville, Ralph Lutz, a prominent Lexington businessman, said, "Ora, you need to come to Lexington, open up a funeral home." They didn't have one in Lexington at that time. So there was a little building on Frederick Street where Dad opened up an embalming room. And then later on, he bought what was Used to be a seminary building on Delaware Street, Manier Seminary, 1926.
1945, that Irie George wanted to sell his funeral business down in Butler. And he had the funeral home was a storefront funeral home on Main Street there in Butler. And Ora went down and he bought that business, and he bought a home down on Cleveland Street. But then there was Ora with Lexington, Belleville, and Butler, and at this point, no help. And then Dad come back, and this was in January of '46. So he got in the car, never said anything to my mom, got in the car, drove down to Belleville, went up in the apartment, and he said, "Dad, what would it take to get it into the funeral business?" And Ora was so happy he just sprung up. He had all the paperwork there, hoping one of the boys would do it. So that's how Dad ended up decided to go to Butler and run that business. And then when Bob got out of the Navy, he went to mortuary school. He was in the class behind Dad. And I guess that just, to me, kind of shows how the Snyders have operated. You know, it was no advantage to Ora to have those other two funeral homes, but it was for his boys. We're just here borrowing this profession for our working career, and we're trying to set it up to make it better for the ones that are following up behind us.
Fatherly advice. My dad was a quiet man, never imposing, and as my mother would tell us kids, your father is a very well respected gentleman in the community. Upon my mother's passing, Dad told us kids, I should have told her more often how much I appreciated her. So I would say that my father's best advice to me was his witness to his family on the type of life he exemplified.
Well, early recollection that I have of my grandfather in the business was he was a very stately gentleman, and I can remember how my grandfather knew virtually everyone that came in for a service of some type. And I was impressed by the reputation and the demeanor that he had within the community there in Belleville.
I remember my grandmother was this sweet, gentle woman that just was filled with love for her entire family. She died in '66, so I was about 12 when she died, so I don't have a whole lot of memories of her.
My grandfather and my father were very proud when I joined the funeral service. I was able to have that same pride when my son decided that he wanted to be part of the Snyder family funeral homes.
I do have memories of my dad operating the business. There was a brief time when I was thinking about a different career in high school, but I really always knew I was going to do this because I saw how well you treated people. And how essentially people came to you with a problem, and then how they reacted to that. That was very attractive to me. My mother, Chantel Snyder, on the other hand, she was not so thrilled about my choice of careers, joining the family business. She thought that there might be a different future for her youngest son. And she wasn't that thrilled initially. It didn't daunt me at all. I went forward.
A lot of kids want to be like their dad. They want to do things that their dad does. And I remember my dad doing a service for a classmate. And right then it dawned on me that being able to help somebody at that and watching my dad successfully help that family and my friends was something that pushed me to pursue the funeral business.
I don't think I fully realized what all my dad did. the impact that my dad had on people, on our community, on even my friends.
Growing up in the funeral home was interesting, I will say. I remember being very upset when we moved out of the funeral home because I thought I would never see my dad because he worked so much. But I think I'm kind of making up for lost time now since I work with my dad, and getting to see my father every day is definitely one of the best parts of the job.
I was most proud when my son said he wanted to become a funeral director. I think that's a compliment to every father and every family. Most grateful.
My family and my dad have been very, very integral in just easing me into it, to go into this business with him and to work every single day to better our community and to make lives easier and better for every family that we come in contact with.
Being able to work with my family each and every day is one of the highlights of what I'm able to do. Working in a family business, I really get to enjoy my work, being alongside my sister and my father and other cousins. It's all in the family. It makes it a fun experience where we're able to really be family as well as serve the community around us.
When the boys were at war, wasn't that the motivation for grandmother, for Marion, to get her license?
Yes.
Didn't she have to get her license in order for grandfather and grandmother to actually operate during those time frames? And we have no knowledge that she was the first woman funeral director in Ohio, but one of the very first. Yeah, she would have been licensed in 1945.
Well, during the war yet.
Yeah, during the war.
We don't have good memories of the ambulance work because we'd get called out of bed during the night and we'd be scared to death and sitting there in the ambulance just a shaking, not knowing what we were going to get into.
And that's why only 4 of the boys got into the funeral business.
Right.
Everybody, a lot of the other younger ones were turned off by having that ambulance duty.
That's right.
Well, at that point, funeral homes had to decide, are we going to be in the ambulance business or not?
I recall you telling me that you were thrilled to get out of the ambulance business.
Yes. This is interesting because this was the Marion ambulance, and it was a 1975 model, and we sold it to the Belleville Fire Department. And the first call they had with that, they drove that across the field and straddled a stump and tore out the whole bottom of the ambulance.
First trip.
Yeah, first trip.
Then Clay's dad, Phil, he was a little bit younger than Dick and Bob when they got in the business. And when he come up, I think that's when they first started requiring that you have your college. Did he not go to Ashland College and got his college before you could go to mortuary school?
I recall Howard Meredith came to Belleville to borrow the horse-drawn hearse for Fredericktown sesquicentennial. And when he bought it back, he said to Dad, "Ori, why don't you and your boys come to Fredericktown and buy me out?"
At that time, they purchased a funeral home in Fredericktown, down in Knox County. They moved in May of '53. And at that time, Dad and Mom and my 2 brothers and I, we moved to Fredericktown. I was 5 years old. And from there, they expanded to Mount Gilead, I believe. They bought the funeral home over there. It was a Dr.
Nathan Tucker.
This Dr. Tucker's laboratory and house were coming up for sale, and they at auction. And they went back over and they bid that in and bought it, while brother Bob was on vacation. He didn't even know about it. He come back from vacation, they'd bought a building, was going to make it a funeral home. And that's about the time that the funeral homes formed a corporation. It started out, Ora and Marion owned the business. And then in 1954, with Phil, Dick, and Bob in the business, they formed a partnership. And then in 1962, they incorporated, the 3 boys incorporated, and that's when they bought out Ora and Marion's share, and it no longer became a partnership, but they became incorporated in 1962.
So it wasn't until 1970 when my brother Bob wanted to leave the business that Dick and Phil offered me the position to go to Lexington.
Paul and I basically started in the business at the same time. I got out of mortuary school in March of '70, and he moved to Lexington in November of that same year. So we kind of grew up in the business together.
1980, there were 5 family funeral homes. Excuse me, 6. And that number is 16 plus now. So we've certainly been blessed with opportunity in the community's trust, no question.
Clay, how many Snyders have joined into the family business and become funeral directors?
Well, Dennis, there's been 18, including my son Ridge, and also Wes's son, Braxton, who's in mortuary school now. I feel funeral service is so important because it provides a support network for those grieving who have lost a loved one, and most importantly, because it recognizes a life well lived and the significance of those we love. Just as the importance of a new birth or marriage, which are part of the fabric of society, so too is death, the loss of a loved one, and the funeral process.
Funeral service is important because it marks a milestone in a family when someone passes away. That milestone will forever be referenced. And so what we do is to commemorate that milestone and make it important and make it just a lasting tribute and something they can always look back on as a family.
The most rewarding part about being a funeral director is being able to serve your friends in the community. The appreciation that you get for the assistance and helping families in the community that you sit beside of when you're at a ball game or you rub elbows with when you go to the grocery store, and then you're able to help them at a time of need.
Yes, we are paid to do our job, but the real payment is those non-monetary payments, and the sentiment behind them is really quite gratifying.
The emotional side of being able to help somebody through the grieving process to make things a little bit easier on our end is worth everything to me that you could possibly think of.
For me, that one's pretty easy. It's about relationships. And then you walk with them through the whole process, and you just build a relationship, a love for them and with them that you share, and you carry it with you the rest of your life.
Is being able to make a difference in families' lives. And for me, there's very few other times in life where you can recreate something that you feel so good about that moment in serving the family.
When families come back and just thank us, it doesn't have to be anything grand or special, just when they come back and just say thank you for all that you did, and they recognize that you were able to take something off their plate and really allow them to go through this experience as family rather than having to worry about all the small details.
It so warms your spirit to know that you could be there for someone in a way that's actually going to change their life going forward. And so many jobs you just don't get that.
Being able to answer the call that not everybody can answer.
We're normal people, just like you and me. We have lives too. We enjoy spending time with our family. We have lots of different hobbies that we enjoy. We're no different than anyone else.
Even if you don't have a great sense of humor going into it, somehow you develop one. So I'm not trying to say that funeral directors are, all they're doing is cracking jokes in the background, because that'd be inappropriate. But really, you end up just having a great sense of humor is what I think that most of the people that I've enjoyed around funeral service, they often they work really hard, but then they also play really hard, and they often just have just a great sense of humor.
The important part our spouses played in this business. I can recall my mother and Dennis's mother Helen, my wife Chantel, would spend hours on the telephone calling in obituaries and spelling out the names phonetically, and today that's all done on the computer.
Well, I brought some photos up for our celebration, and one of them, my mom, we call it the kitchen table, but that was really the business office there at Fredericktown. and it's a picture of her. She's got the funeral home telephone up to this ear and our private telephone up to this ear. Back then, the deadline was like 11:30 in the morning to call the obituary into the paper and still get it in the same day's paper. You could call them at 11:30 in the morning and the obituary would be in the paper that afternoon.
Our wives would step into the prep room and do the lady's hair, and a very important part of it all.
Or show us how to dress the lady.
Exactly.
Bring a dress in, well, is this the front or is this the back? What's the, kind of important when you're when you're doing that.
Yeah, for me, the biggest change in several decades has been the scope and the scale. Yes, technology has been huge, but Dad, when you and I were running 2 locations, it was just the 2 of us. The 2 of us did everything. We mowed the grass, we washed the cars, we met the families. I did the embalming. There was nobody else. And that was because
we brought the hearses, we parked the cars.
Yeah, the scale
we
was.
put the vault in the ground.
Yeah, there were a handful of us.
Yeah.
We approach every situation as a team of funeral directors. So though you probably have one funeral director you're working with, you really have 5 other funeral directors working behind the scenes that you might not even see. And it makes every aspect of what we do that much better by working together.
Again, we are just so blessed to have so many great people, from everybody from the guy who's helping open the door to lining up the cars outside to the directors who are sitting down with the families, who are running the funeral services.
Family business has been very fortunate to grow the way that it has. We've had to add staff members and associates that aren't necessarily a part of our family, but some things hold true in that we really want to create a family-like culture here, and that we're all in this together, we're all in the same team.
Attributes that describe our funeral home team members and funeral directors that serve families are good communicators. They pay attention to detail. I believe they clearly have the drive to serve families, being available. We answer the phones after hours. It's not a 9-to-5 job. We are on call and off call, but the families that we serve, they have access to us.
Once you join the Snyder family of funeral homes, even if you retire and move somewhere else, it's still in your blood and your DNA, and you celebrate the growth and witness the expansion of it, and it'll always be a part of me until the day I take my last breath.
For over 36,000 days in a row, our family has been available. I'm gonna start crying thinking about that. That's so intense to think about, just how long we've been dedicated to the communities that we're just so honored to serve. And we've been blessed to grow, but yet the same thing happens. We go to a new community and the same thing. We're by that phone and we're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what is going on. That's what we're there for.
I agree. You're all blessed that you're in communities where you've been for generations, where I'm serving communities that we've only been there for 1 generation, and it's neat to start a new legacy there and earn that community's respect while having the respect of the other communities always behind us as well.
It's our job to make sure that my kids, your kids, the next generations have an opportunity too. I, for one, am very positive about the future of our company. I think we are strategically positioned to go forward, and I'm pleased for the position that this company was handed to my generation and how we're going to pass it off to the next generation.
Well, I'd like to say how proud I am of the generation that I worked with. Of course, I've all explained how proud I was of being a grandson of Ora Snyder, how proud I am of the next generation that's come behind me, and the generation behind them, and a 5th generation that's coming. That, whenever I stand on the door to help with the service, I stand there with pride that I am representing one of the generations of Snyder Funeral Homes.
Not ashamed of any of them.
Not ashamed of a one.
That's right.
You think of our family business is going to be in business for 100 years. And I feel so lucky that the previous generations did all that they could to make sure that we would be able to continue in business. They're the reason that we're going to make it to 100 years. They're the reason that we could make it to 200 years, is from some of their sacrifices and some of their, just tough decisions when it comes to the business.
To me, I think it's very special that the Snyders are celebrating 100 years of service within the Central Ohio community. It's special that our family has getting ready to celebrate our 5th generation, as my grandson Braxton is completing his education at mortuary school, and he will be the 5th generation of the Snyder family that is going to serve peoples in the Central Ohio community. To me, that's a real sense of pride that generation after generation has seen what funeral service can mean for them within the family structure.
I can't imagine how Ora and Marion would feel to see what Snyder Funeral Homes has grown into. You would believe that it's from their heart is what we've created and how we've grown. So it'd be so neat to get to hear them and what they'd have to say about our family's business.
My dad would be impressed with the position the funeral home is in today, operating multiple chapels.
Snyder Funeral Homes has succeeded when most family businesses don't, largely because of how our family invests in the next generation. I feel that at 100 years, the company is just ready to move forward.